This is an opportunity for all of you to learn about a brand new area that Dan and I are currently visiting and filming in. And it is Warmsprings Reservoir in southeast Oregon and the Stinking Water Mountains. And this is a mountain range that very few people have ever been in, and it stretches south out of the Blue Mountains down to the Nevada line. It's an outstanding desert mountain range, and we are going to explore it. So come along, see what we find, and discover what is in this amazing area. While going south on our trip down into southeastern Oregon, we came across an incredible formation of serpentinite, which is a beautiful, beautiful mineral that is exposed to the surface both north of Mount Vernon, Oregon, and south of Canyon City, Oregon. And serpentinite is green, it's also black, and it is eye-catching. It is very closely related to jades, and it is one of the most beautiful semi-precious stones that you can find in large quantity. Serpentinite is a stone that once you see it or pick it up, you'll want some more. As we moved on south, we came across small herds of antelope. These are an absolutely beautiful ungulate that is in the bovine family. And these antelope, this time of year in the spring, the females are getting ready to drop their fawns, and they run around in groups together, sometimes along with the young males. And we lucked out and got fairly close to several of these small herds on our way down the road. Along the way, as we proceeded south, we came across the following species. Hooker's balsam root, which is an absolutely beautiful composite named after Dr. Hooker, who was a botanist in England. Never did see North America, never came to North America, but he was an expert on American plants. Another species that we found in the same general area was Northern Wyethia, and that is named after Nathaniel Wyeth, and he came west in 1836 with a whole bunch of naturalists in tow, like John Kirk Townsend and Mr. Nuttall, who was a botanist. And they were all coming to explore the West, and Mr. Wyeth was their trail boss. These plants got named after them, after Mr. Nathaniel Wyeth, because he was a famous explorer. And the flower that is named after him is eye-catching. It's over 2 3/4 inches wide. It's white with a yellow center, and it's a composite flower, which simply means it has many, many smaller flowers in the center of the bloom. Northern Wyethia is eye-catching. I can't say that enough. It's absolutely beautiful. I would urge you, if you're traveling through eastern Oregon in the spring of the year, keep an eye out for this large white composite next to the ground. Another geologic formation that we came across as we were moving south into the desert was a large, large deposit of Mazama ash. This ash pocket is probably 60 feet deep and probably 150 feet wide. And Mazama is the mountain that exploded, creating Crater Lake. This particular site had eroded out over the years, and it has absolutely beautiful shadows and all kinds of erosion that has really created a eye-catching sight to look at. Another amazing bird that we saw on our way south in an area you would never expect them were two forester's terns, which is a fish-eating species of bird that frequents large lakes, large rivers, and is hardly ever found in small meadow streams. And that's where these two birds were. Just was really exciting and made our day to find these two unexpected species. As we were driving towards our destination, we came across a wet meadow, and it had a pair of greater sandhill cranes in it. And greater sandhill cranes are breeding this time of year. The female builds a huge nest, lays 2 eggs, then feeds and defends that nest area, as does the male. And we were lucky to find this pair of cranes, and they were feeding like mad. And it was just nice to see them in an isolated wet meadow surrounded by sagebrush. As we proceeded on south, we arrived at Warmsprings Reservoir, which is a very large reservoir, and we located the campground and park. We went to use the restroom, and it was unusable, not because you couldn't get in. There were over 200 cliff swallows that had built a colony in and around the building itself. You could not open the door because it was covered with nests, all these cliff swallow nests. And cliff swallows build mud daub nests. It takes them about 500 mouthfuls of mud from some mud puddle nearby, and that takes them 500 trips to build a single nest. And so all these 200 plus swallows were working on creating this colony. We watched them into the evening. It was the most amazing thing. And they would swish in and out all at once, calling and talking to each other. And others were flying out over the lake and back. And the wind was howling. It was cold. And I don't know how much they got as far as food or insects to feed on, because it was not a very pleasant evening. But these birds were unhindered by that weather. And they continued to be very active even as it got darker and darker. And finally, about 8:45, they went into the nest colony around the restroom and went quiet. That evening, Dan went out and filmed the Milky Way. And it was dark, it was beautiful, and the stars were just clear as could be. As daylight rose this morning, the swallows became active, and the first swallow I saw out of the colony was at 5 after 5 this morning. And pretty soon more and more birds joined in the flying around and calling and talking. They are one of the most vocal swallows we have in North America. They're constantly visiting with each other. They have tug of wars. They chase each other to the ground. They're very, very active. Cliff swallows are unique in all of North America because of the massive numbers of birds that will nest in one colony. This entire building was surrounded by hundreds of nests on the outside and hundreds of birds on the inside of those nests. And it was cold. It was frosted last night at Warmsprings Reservoir. It's very cold. And these swallows were going nuts trying to find insects to eat. And they were out over the lake, and they were over the sagebrush. They were everywhere looking for food. So the other amazing thing was we got to watch them collect mud to continue building new nests. And when they're down there on the ground, they put their wings straight up and they spastically twitch them around. And that is to keep other cliff swallows from landing on top of them. It keeps them off, and they're able to collect their mouthful of mud, which they take back to the colony and add to some nests that they're working on. The amazing thing is, Bird after bird after bird, sometimes groups of cliff swallows would land in this mud, pick it up, and carry it back to the colony. So it was an amazing experience to observe this. The next morning after our arrival, we got a good look at Warmsprings Reservoir. This is a reservoir that was done during the 1930s, built on the Malheur River. It dammed up the river and it has created a very large reservoir there. It's 3,600 feet in elevation. This river that created Warmsprings Reservoir is part of the Snake River and Columbia River tributaries. The water for Warmsprings Reservoir is there strictly for recreation purposes. So a lot of people go fishing there. A lot of people go there to camp in the summer. It has no forests anywhere. There is one tree in the whole area. It's a cottonwood tree, and it stands out in the lake. And so you can get great looks of a single tree out in Warmsprings Reservoir. This reservoir is very important to the wildlife of this area. So that means deer, antelope, and birds. Large numbers of birds gather there to breed and in migration as they pass through these mountain ranges in this arid area. We went down to Warm Springs to look at the bird life and to see what else was to be found there. Some of the birds we saw were common loon, which is uncommon in this area, and it's a migrant, does not nest there. Another bird we saw was horned lark, which is abundant there, and they are resident. Some horned larks drift into the area during the winter, but most nest in the area and live their entire life in and around Warmsprings Reservoir. Another bird we found was a spotted sandpiper. Spotted sandpipers are migratory. They nest and breed at Warmsprings Reservoir, and then in the fall they depart and they leave the area. Another common one we found was the western meadowlark, which leaves the area in winter but is common in the spring and through the fall, and they have the most beautiful song, and they are highly territorial of their nesting site, and they'll let you know when you're in their nesting site with loud calls to try and alert you and to chase you out of the area. The western meadowlark is an absolutely Class A songster. Another one that we saw was lark sparrows. Lark sparrows just arrived back in the Northwest about a week ago, and they are one of the most spectacular, large migratory sparrows that come and nest in the arid areas of the Pacific Northwest. Lark sparrows have chestnut on their face, beautiful designs on their faces, and they are a sagebrush obligate, which simply means they have to have sagebrush or bitterbrush or some other, like sarcobatus, other native desert shrubs, and that's what they nest in. And so you seldom will see them outside in the breeding season away from those species of woody shrubs. While we were at Warm Springs Reservoir, we discovered 2 Caspian terns that showed up, and they were fishing in the reservoir. This is the largest tern species in the Pacific Northwest interior. These 2 birds were kind of a surprise because you typically don't find them in isolated reservoirs out in the desert. Around Warm Springs Reservoir is lots and lots of public land. And on this public land are numerous cattle. There are calving herds, there are other herds of cattle, and they are everywhere, all over this public land. The interesting thing is these cows have been placed intentionally in areas where there's water, in creeks, and they now are stomping through the creeks. They're everywhere along the shoreline. They degrade the vegetation They have dropped a lot of cow manure in the water and along the shorelines of these creeks, which pollutes them. And this water then flows into the reservoir. And a lot of native wildlife depends on those open surface streams to survive. We came along the Malheur River, which flows south, and it is a tributary of the Snake River. But the Malheur River in most of this part of Oregon has been stripped of all vegetation. There is no riparian cover whatsoever. There's not even a willow. And the sad thing is, this has been a result of tens of years of cattle grazing along this river. There's absolutely no vegetation other than grass. That has deprived a lot of native wildlife of cover, places to nest, and thermal cover, which is very important in the summer and in the winter. And it's gone. There's absolutely nothing. It really is troublesome because the Malheur River is also an anadromous fish run river, which means there are steelhead and salmon that go up the Snake River and make it to the Malheur River. And so they would use this river if the water wasn't so warm. And it's warm because it has no shade at all. As we traveled along the Malheur River, we came to the town of Riverside. Well, it's not much of a town, but it is a community. And we came across a absolutely beautiful basalt rim covered with large geometric shapes of lichen. There was orange, green, gray, black, just splattered all over these rocks. And lichens are the beginning of breakdown for that rock surface. Also on this basalt was fence lizards. They were out and about, and one of them was very, very black, and they are also called bluebellies. And in this case, they were running around on this beautiful lichen-covered basalt. While we were visiting the Malheur River, Dan stuck a GoPro down in the water to see if there were fish, and sure enough, there were small minnows, probably shiners, and maybe some dace. These fish are surviving in this river. The water is warm because of a lack of riparian vegetation. While traveling along the road into Crane, Oregon, we came upon a pair of burrowing owls. And burrowing owls are really important for rodent control. And in this instance, these burrowing owls are feeding on Belding's ground squirrel. Burrowing owls nest in burrows that are largely dug by either ground squirrels or badgers. And in this case, it was badger digs, and they were in there and they had their young down in a burrow in that badger hole. Burrowing owls are absolutely gorgeous bird. The male is usually bleached out and much paler than the female, simply because he sits in the sun protecting that female and her young down in the burrow. And she's much darker. Burrowing owls are not winter residents in this area, and so they migrate out of here every fall. We stayed at the Crane Hot Springs, and it is a large hot spring. And I have to share with you, the first time I saw the Crane Hot Spring was in 1973, and it was a hole in the ground about 12 feet deep with hot water in it and cow bones in the bottom. That was the Crane Hot Spring. And then there were little streams that cowboys had dug, and they had little pools they had dug along these streams to cool the water off, and they were laying in these algae covered pools out there. But today it is an absolutely wonderful place to visit. And there's a habitat area there. The important thing is it produces a large amount of water, which ends up flowing out into the wildlife area. In the wildlife area is a large concentration of creosote brush, and that's because the soils there are highly alkaline. And in those creosote bushes, or Sarcobatus, there are brewer's blackbirds that nest down in that thick cover, which is very important for the protection of their young. And so they sit up on top of the creosote bushes in the evening, and they stretch and they call, and their plumage is so iridescent that it shines blue and green. They're absolutely beautiful, and they have this gorgeous pale white eye, and it makes them look rather intelligent. So they're a neat bird. This morning, as we were leaving Crane, we stopped at a little row of trees, Siberian elms, and Dan was able to get some shots of a beautiful Bullock's oriole, a male. And this is a migrant, a neotropic migrant, and they've just returned to the Harney Basin. As we were leaving Crane, in the open fields along the road were hundreds of Belding's ground squirrels. And this is a native ground squirrel, and most people think of them as a pest. They are not. They create large labyrinth tunnels underground, which becomes an irrigation system when snow melts or it rains. And that water flows underground and waters everything there. And then during the summer, because of that moist soil, all kinds of amphibians, reptiles and insects and other rodents utilize that riparian area. Another flower that we found is one you never want to pick or get anywhere near, really. It's called the death camas. Death camas is a white columnar blooming flower with probably 30 different blooms on it along the stem. And it is a flower that is eye-catching. It is pollinated by all kinds of native bees and wasps, but it is extremely poison to mammals, and people should never eat it or even handle it. So be aware and look it up. While going up a canyon in the southern Stinking Water Mountains, we came across 3 California quail, which is absolutely unexpected and totally unusual. I have never seen California quail anywhere in this region. Along the Stinking Water Mountain Road, we came across a beautiful stand of Indian paintbrush. And in this case, it was saprophytic. It's a saprophytic plant, and it was living off the roots of bitterbrush, which was just starting to leaf out. But this beautiful, beautiful Indian paintbrush was there, and it was a brilliant red. And Indian paintbrush is capable of coming up in any color. Yellows, greens, oranges, red, pink, you name it. But this was a brilliant red. And it was, again, rooted to and utilizing bitterbrush or antelope bush. As we were walking up the road, we came across bitterbrush, and it was loaded with tent caterpillars, large numbers of them, and they had constructed their tents, and they were all over the outside of these tents because they were soaking up sun, and they were flipping out, literally. They were flipping and rolling around, and they are the caterpillars or the instars of a moth. And there were dozens and dozens of them. So there are many bird species that eat tent caterpillars. So we'll hope that the birds have ample caterpillars to find. As we were driving up into the Stinkwater Mountains, we came upon something that is extremely disturbing, and that is the war on western juniper. Thousands and thousands of trees had been cut down and left, piled, so they're going to burn them. And it's a total loss of habitat, important habitat, because this is a native tree. And the whole notion that it needs to go is wrong. And it just makes me sick and sad to see all this habitat that so many animals and birds and amphibians require. To go in and cut out thousands of acres of western juniper, something's wrong. I was just astounded by the number of trees I've seen removed. They're not using the wood, they burn it. They're not using anything off of it. They're just going to burn everything. And so I look at this massive war on western juniper, and it's so unnecessary. And it just makes me sick. So the reason for cutting the juniper down is, the public reason is because they think it's sucking all the water out of the shallow aquifer. One of the real reasons is for cattle. They want it to grow back in grass. And they want to get rid of the juniper because it does not allow for the growth of, other than sagebrush, nothing else can grow under it when it's a living tree. And so they are whacking them to allow for more and better grazing for cattle. While we were looking at this vast loss of juniper trees, we spotted something, and that was 2 giant puffballs. One was probably 6 by 7 inches, and the next one was 1 foot long and 8 inches wide. The largest puffballs I have ever seen anywhere in Oregon, and especially in a desert where all the shade has been cut down. And here were these giant puffballs. Astounding. As we climbed higher and higher into the Stinking Water Mountains, we came across leatherleaf ceanothus. And this is a plant that is strong, and by strong, the leaves are eaten by nothing except for one insect, and that is the California tortoiseshell, which is a butterfly, and its caterpillar feeds on leatherleaf ceanothus. And the reason that they are able to do that is the instar, or the caterpillar, is able to chew through the thick cuticle over the leaf of the ceanothus. And nothing else is able to do that. So the California tortoiseshell feeds very well on leatherleaf ceanothus, which only grows on very hot sites and only in desert areas, arid areas at high elevations. We found a lupin today that I have to identify. When it first blooms, it is blue-purple and eventually turns white. It's absolutely beautiful, and the Stinking Water Mountains are loaded with it at mid-elevation. They were everywhere. Along the road in full bloom as we came downslope in the Stinking Water were pin cherries, or bitter cherry, and they were in full bloom. An absolutely beautiful cherry. And it's our only native cherry in this mountain range, which is very much like the Blue Mountains to the north of us. We spotted a wet area in the shrub steppe in the sage, and it had giant headed clover blooming in it. And this is the largest blooming clover in the Pacific Northwest, and it usually only grows in shrub steppe sagebrush areas. And it was absolutely beautiful. It's pink, and it has a very small plant and a big, big head. So it's an amazing, gorgeous flower.